Hey guys, Anime Princess here, and today we're going to be doing the week 1 recap slash build deep dive for a Spark character. For anyone who hasn't been tuning into the Twitch streams, on day 3 we unlocked our first 3 Void Stones, which was Eater, Exarch, and Maven. Maven took like 13 minutes because we did it on really budget, low investment gear. It took a couple more days to just make my build feel comfortable enough to attempt Uber Elder, and that went by smoothly as well. So we had all 4 Void Stones fairly early, and after that we quickly did all the map favorite unlocks, which is the Feared fight, Cyrus, basically every boss under the sun besides the uber pinnacle bosses. After we completed all our Atlas unlocks, we retooled the build to fit in an Aegis Aurora. I was worried I was going to lose damage because this shield doesn't really have any offense whatsoever. However, by restructuring my tree, I was able to keep the roughly 10 to 11 million maximum damage while making us basically invincible in the process, at least in terms of mapping. Now moving into week 2, the plan is probably to do increasingly difficult mapping strategies since we've tuned our character to be really tanky and powerful in maps. And we might also do some bossing in the form of Maven invitations because Spark is extremely good at fighting in that small circle of a Maven arena. That's the plan for week 2. Week 1, we kind of skipped the league mechanic because I just wanted to go through maps really fast and gear my character and get my levels. However, Spark seems to be doing fairly well in the Sanctums, so we're definitely done skipping that. We're going to be doing Sanctums for the rest of the league. All right, now onto the character. We're going to do a quick once over of my gearing. We'll open the passive tree and have a look at that. And then we're going to pop into Path of Building to look at the numbers behind the build. So the first big item we crafted was the body armor. We slammed elevated spell critical strike chance with elevated item rarity support. We got lucky with the Awakener orb because it also gave us +1 to level of socketed active skill gems. Now for you guys following, I would suggest using the crafting guide on my channel for spell crit with frenzy charge on hit. That is a lot more damage, and I think that would be useful to 99% of people rather than targeting item rarity support, which is purely a luxury. I actually do get frenzy charge on hit elsewhere, which we'll cover shortly, so I don't need to get frenzy charge on hit, but in general that's probably more powerful. For the helmet, it's just Spark fires 3 additional projectiles. I wanted some chaos res, so an easy way to get chaos res while self-crafting gear is to just reforge chaos. So I was just reforging chaos until I got T1 chaos res and a high life roll. And obviously you need an open suffix for trigger socketed spells when you focus, because we want to have all 3 of our spells, Tornado, Frost Shield, and Sigil of Power, all linked in a 4-link with life tap. So we just have one button. And that's what the helmet achieves. So we cast everything with one button, so now we only really have to press focus and cast Spark. We don't have to fiddle around with so many different buttons. That gets annoying. So those were the first 2 big pieces. For the helmet implicits, mana reservation efficiency is really nice because now I'm fitting in 5 auras, but it's also because the ashes gives a lot of reservation efficiency. We're also using an enlightened support. Auras are really nice, so any way to get increased mana reservation efficiency is a plus, and getting it on the helmet implicits is one of the cheapest and easiest ways to get it. In my opinion, that's crucial. My gloves are pretty interesting. A lot of people on Twitch chat ask me, how did you craft these gloves? So let's just cover that right here. My gloves have a mod that says, well, it's basically T1 cold resistance and also up to 50% increased damage with hits against chilled enemies. And if we're using Call of the Brotherhood or Call of the Void, we will chill everything. So this is just 50% increased damage, which is kind of crazy. The way you do this, you can't actually roll this mod through crafting. It has to self-drop, and you drop it from these things, but it's for Alva's reverse incursion. It's the correct memory for reverse incursion. Enemies pop out of it and they drop a lot of special items. And one of the items is going to be a glove that has T1 resistance with another special mod against it. And you don't actually have to get cold resistance because you can just pop it in the harvest bench, and you can do, like, say you get the lightning resistance with the increased crit with shock. You would just do lightning to cold. It just costs 500 and it's going to give you the mod I have. Or there's another one that's fire damage with added fire damage when you ignite. I don't even know what that mod is, but then you just do fire to cold, and it's, again, you get the glove base. That's the only way to get the mod. You can roll the prefixes with just however you choose to. There's different crafting methods. For example, you could use like Eldritch Chaos Orbs, plenty of ways. And for the implicits on gloves, the two best, in my opinion, are another source of Pierce and chance to unnerve enemies on hit, because that's a lot of damage for spell builds. So the boots are just a bunch of stats, nothing too crazy. However, I was able to get a Betrayal Unveil, which is movement speed with also immunity to chill. And if you're immune to chill, you can use Call of the Void without the downsides. And I'd say Call of the Void is slightly better than Call of the Brotherhood. We do talk about it there's a YouTube video that just compares the two on my channel if you want to know the details, but that's why I'm using Call of the Void rather than Call of the Brotherhood. And you just need to be immune to chill, or you need to find a way to turn the chill into an advantage, such as self-chill. So either one of those. Ashes of the Stars. Again, this just gives a lot of nice things. The increased quality is especially good for our Spark Gem, because Spark quality gives us projectile speed, so this makes our projectiles much, much faster. And also, Anomalous Blood and Sand quality gives projectile speed, so adding an extra 20 to 30 quality to Anomalous Blood and Sand gives us a ridiculous amount of proj speed. Also, Ashes gives us the increased reservation needed to be able to run extra auras. For example, if you don't have much reservation efficiency, you're just going to be running Tempest Shield, Determination, and Zealotry. However, if you are able to stack enough extra reservation efficiency, you're now able to run the Blood and Sand Anomalous for a lot of projectile speed, and you can also run Herald of Ice for just the nice pops while we're mapping. Because we're a mapping build, mapping is great with Herald of Ice. And if you want to be extra tanky, you can take off the Anomalous Blood and Sand and swap it for Defiance Banner. That just gives us a lot of armor. Now, armor is important for Aegis Aurora because you need a high baseline of armor for Aegis Aurora to recover enough energy shield to make it worthwhile. So we have 1,622 energy shield, and almost all of this is had through the single Glorious Vanity here, which is in the name of Doriani, because this gives us Corrupted Soul, and if we take this off, we lose 900 energy shield. So we're getting ton of energy shield simply from allocating Corrupted Soul right here. As for Aegis Aurora, we do have the high baseline of armor. With the flasks up, we are at 24, but we don't even have Defiance Banner on. If we put that on, I go closer to 30,000. Aegis Aurora obviously needs to block to be able to recover the energy shield, so I'm at approximately 60% attack and spell block. Those cap at 75%, but 60% is pretty good. The belt, nothing to talk about. It's just filling my res. For the weapon, I just wanted to have a lot of projectile speed and also have some nice damage. For suffixes, I'd say the best three are projectile speed, followed by cast speed, followed by crit multi, and increased critical strikes to spells is an honorable mention as the fourth best. As for the prefixes, there are quite a few good ones. High amount of spell damage, high amount of lightning damage. You can get +1 to level of lightning or +1 to level of all spell skill gems. And there's also just a flat added lightning damage to spells. So this wand has high proj speed, it has a +1 level, and it has a decent added lightning damage to spells. So there's 3 really good mods on here. Crafted cast speed isn't the best, but if you have an open suffix and you don't have cast speed, I would probably do cast speed because cast speed makes the build feel so nice. And the spell damage, would like it to be higher, but this wand is good enough for week 1 in my opinion. This ring, nothing special, it's just filling my stats as well. As for flasks, if you're going Aegis, the Roomies is mandatory because it adds a lot of chance to block. I'm using immunity to ignite on a flask because I don't have a way to deal with ignites otherwise. I have cast speed on a flask because cast speed is just a lot of damage. And increased armor, when we go with Aegis Aurora, we want to have as much armor as we can, so that's a pretty good flask suffix as well. Bottled Faith is the best damage flask for us, so that's why we're using a Bottled Faith. So A quick look at the passive tree. We're using Harmony of Purpose for Forbidden Flame and Forbidden Flesh. And what this does is it gives us power charge, frenzy charge, and endurance charges. However, what you guys will mostly be using is a small cluster with Enduring Composure to get your endurance charges. You'll be getting frenzy charges from the body armor, and you guys could get power charges if you really want them through a large cluster with the passive Storm Rider. As for the clusters, there already is a video guide just showing you guys how to pick that, so I'm not going to go into that. I should note though, I do have a critical strike chance cluster here instead of one more pierce, and that's just because it's pretty important to get as close to crit cap as possible, and I wasn't crit capped, so we're getting some crit from the cluster. On to the path of building. You can see right now we're hitting for approximately 2.6 mil, and that translates, if we're assuming 4 spark hits, to around 10 million damage. Pretty high effective HP pool. This is all thanks to Aegis Aurora working in conjunction with high armor, high block, and high energy shield because of Corrupted Soul. Let's go over the skills. So as I mentioned earlier, we've got these 4 skills in the helmet with trigger focus. For my Enlighten setup, I have the 3 most costly auras, which are Tempest Shield, Zealotry, and Determination. We have an Enlighten 3 to reduce the cost of them. Now, I'm running Shield Charge Faster Attacks as my main way to get through maps. Shield Charge Faster Attacks is much faster than Flame Dash. So if you want to map fast, I think this is a no-brainer. I just have a Herald Device in here. Herald Device is really good for clear. We get some explosions, and it just feels really nice. Now, I have a 10% aura that I rotate between. Blood and Sand is obviously going to be the best for the Sanctum League mechanic because it's not really too rippy. We're already super tanky. So just having that extra projectile speed will make the Sanctum feel much better. We'll be able to off-screen way further away because the projectiles will shoot so fast. While we're mapping, so you can see I can go from like mid-20s to over 30,000 armor if I use Defiance Banner. So if I'm trying to level up, I'll probably take off Blood and Sand, spec into Defiance Banner. That's like my tech for mapping versus Sanctums. Flame Dash is linked with a level 1 Arcane Surge. Now this will just proc Arcane Surge whenever we Flame Dash. So we'll want to Flame Dash every so often to give us the Arcane Surge buff. This just gives us more spell damage. If we take this off, you know, we go down to 9.3 from 10.3. So it's pretty good value for 1 link. I would suggest using this setup. For Sniper's Mark, Sniper's Mark is the one ability that takes up a lot of dex. So if you aren't able to get enough dex, you can de-level it to just how much dex you have. But as you can see with the DPS, this really adds quite a bit. So as we de-level it down to 10, you know, like this full DPS is noticeably decreasing, but it's not that bad. So it's better to still use this than to just completely take it off because your dex is too low. So just keep this at whatever level is possible. I'm able to get it to max level. We're running Cast from Damage Taken, Molten Shell. This is just another really good layer of defense. I'm running them at level 21. You don't have to run it at such a high level. I don't really think there's a downside with my HP pool. This is still going to proc. It's going to still save me. Portal Gem, it's completely optional. If you don't want to run a Portal Gem, you could link a Golem to your Cast with Damage Taken setup. So for Golems, Lightning Golem gives us some cast speed, which is a lot of damage. And since it'll be linked in a 3-link with the Cast with Damage Taken, you won't have to resummon it. It'll just keep resummoning itself. So we'll just get this extra damage for free. I don't think Flame Golem is as good. I don't think Ice Golem is as good. This is a really low amount of crit strike chance. Carrion Golem is not good. Chaos Golem is useful for giving us Fizz damage reduction, which is a very, very good stat. So if you want to have some free defenses because you feel like you're falling over in maps maybe you want to choose a Chaos Golem instead of a Lightning Golem. And the last option is Stone Golem, which gives us some life regen, which is perfectly fine as well. So instead of the Portal Gem, you could use Lightning, Chaos, or Stone Golem. In fact, I might swap into this to give it a shot today because I think that would be nice. Finally, on to the Spark 6 link. So I use default quality Spark because I like projectile speed, and the default quality gives us projectile speed. Spell Echo, default quality. Pinpoint, default quality. Now Pinpoint, if you use Pinpoint, you need to spec this mastery here, increased intensity. Because Pinpoint normally caps out at 3 intensity, but if you can get 4 intensity, it is a much bigger damage multiplier. So that is crucial if you use Pinpoint. Also, Pinpoint reduces our projectiles. So if we're using Pinpoint, I do suggest going for the Helmet enchant that gives Spark Fires 3 additional projectiles because it will compensate for that. Now I'm running Hypothermia with Anomalist because Anomalist lets us freeze. And if you're using Call of the Brotherhood, you don't need Anomalist because you're freezing everything no matter what. But I'm running Call of the Void, which doesn't let you freeze. That's the one downside of Call of the Void. You can only chill and shatter, you can't freeze. So Hypothermia lets me freeze. Now this technically isn't the best damage link for me. It's Awakened added lightning damage. This is more damage than Hypothermia, and it also makes your spell cost less. This is a 22 mana cost versus a 23 mana cost. And that is also accounting for the fact that with Awakened added lightning, it bumps my Spark up to level 25, which will make it cost more mana. But this has a lower mana multiplier, so it's still less mana. And level 25 is a breakpoint because you get 1 extra Spark projectile when you hit level 25. As you can see, my Spark is level 24 right now. The reason I'm not using Awakened added lightning is simply because I don't have a blue socket. However, Awakened added lightning and Hypothermia are pretty close. As you can see, it's like 10.6 versus 10.25 for me. So really, you can just use whichever one you want. Obviously, freezing is quite nice. The main downside for Hypothermia is if you run into enemies that can't be afflicted by ailments, this just does nothing, and then your damage drops by a lot. Because the more multiplier for Hypothermia only works if the enemy is chilled. The last link is Inspiration, and if you use a default quality, your spell is going to cost a lot more than if you use a divergent quality. Well, that's going to wrap up this deep dive video. Looking forward to getting back into maps and blasting some monsters. So after this goes live, you can probably catch me on Twitch streaming some Path of Exile. All right, catch you later. Peace.